In this episode, we are going to talk about 3 tips on how to become a successful entrepreneur, how to deal with money in your business, and also how to transform critique into positive feedback. Make sure to stick until the end to find all the answers. Lam, what are the 3 things that you have learned being an entrepreneur and a CEO and you think that everyone else should know?
Sure. So the first thing I think is actually your ability to identify some opportunities. I'm working in tech, so like the industry constantly evolves. Like we had some blockchain stuff happening in the past 5-6 years, or now we have like some AI with ChatGPT. So if you can look at some opportunities like those and see how you can materialize and monetize it, that's actually a tremendous skill to have. Well, the second thing I would think about is when you identify the opportunity, you also need like to solve problems. So being analytical, look at the problems, break it down is also critical in the business as a CEO, because you're going to look at the opportunity, but then is it feasible? How can you actually reach this outcome? So solving the problem constantly, and you're going to have to solve problems all the time, is really important. The last thing I learned is trying to solve problems like this all the time won't actually necessarily lead to success right away. So you'll have just to solve, try, and get some feedback from your customers, from investors, and then come back and keep working. So resilience and the ability just to be used to fail is actually very important.
Wow. And what is the right mindset to have being an entrepreneur, being a CEO, according to you?
So if you have to put in one word, I would say like growth mindset is actually the most important part, because like if you see yourself as a person that can keep evolving all the time, and then you can keep learning new stuff and then combine this new knowledge, then your ability to succeed is going to get higher. I'd like to make an analogy with the athlete. So when you start very young, you're not trained yet, so you're not going to have some great outcome. But by practicing, by training, by doing more and more of those moves, you're going to get better at it. By playing on the field with other players, you're going to learn new things. So that's pretty much the same when you run a business. You're going to just like start to sell. It's not going to work out really well in the beginning. And then slowly, step by step, you're going to understand and get some insights. You're going to learn new things in this environment. I learned way more things when I was in Bangkok as well, in Thailand. Or when you fly to Manila. So you change environment, you meet new people. They're going to give you more insights over time, and then you're going to become a better person and more successful.
Speaking of people and of insights, being an entrepreneur and a CEO, you have to deal a lot with feedbacks, with critics from your partners, your customers, people around you. How do you personally deal with these feedbacks, these critiques, and how do you make them positive?
Sure, I usually use empathy. The way I do it is actually to put myself in the shoes of the other person and then see like why this person is going to tell me such things. What's the motivation behind? And then sometimes they're going to say some harsh things, but those things will be useful. And then I can hear it. And the second step is actually, if I can filter out all the feedback, because some feedbacks are not necessarily productive, then you're looking at, this is actually important and that might actually be something that I can do. So you evaluate feasibility. And then what I do is actually eventually build some new value proposition. I'll give you a very simple example. I was in Singapore a few years ago. And so this company I built is called Wise Pass. And then we sold this membership for $300 a month. And then we started to have like a lot of people buying. The revenue grew like 50% every month. But then when I came back to Singapore, and the investor told me when we were having a beer that the business is not going to work. And that was his feedback. And I told him like, okay, why? Well, the thing is like, if you want to build a big tech startup, you have to have lots of users, millions of users, billions of users. At least this is a mantra. And for him, like $300 a month is way too high. So he's...
You mean the membership itself, the price was too high?
Yes. And because of that, his feedback was, can you make a membership for $10 a month? So like 30 times cheaper, or 10 or 20, or like much cheaper, at least by 10x. And the reason why is because like when you have like a much lower price point, then you're gonna be able like just to grow the business with many more users. So it's better to have like 1 million subscribers at let's say $10, and you will make like a $10 million business per month, rather than having maybe like a $300, say 1,000 people only, because it's easily going to go down.
So what did you do eventually when you spoke to this person?
So the feedback was really productive, but it took me like almost a year just to understand like how can I actually fit in like a plan where we're going to make like $10 a month only, but actually give a great value proposition. Because like making the plan and just selling this for $10 is easy. The hardest part is actually what do you give to people when you sell something for $10 a month? And the solution I found eventually was in 2019 with the brand Singha. It's a beer brand from Thailand. What they did was pretty simple. Like we just priced for $9 a month or 189,000 VND. And people could get like 3 free beers every single day in the bars. So like when you look now at the bar, the cost is around like $2, $3 a single beer. But then you can get up to like 90 beers for a month for only $9 a month. So now you have a great value proposition that you can sell to the market, and then the market will respond. And we had like almost like over 1,000 beers redeemed like within the first 30 days.
So it was a good advice in the long run.
It was a great advice. Even in the beginning, like you might actually take it personally. You might actually feel that attacked, right? But the most important part is to talk to people and get productive comments like this, and know that they're not here just to destroy you, to attack you, but they're here just to tell you that this is going to be better. But I have to tell you that it's not going to be something you can solve right away. So when you have like discussion with investors, like they're going to tell you like problems you need to solve in the long run. A second example would be I got another investor, like he took this membership for $300 a month. And then at that time in 2017, he told me, I have a big problem with your thing, your membership, because you can only access alcohol. And he's married, and his wife really worried about him. So he just told me like, can you do something so it's not just about alcohol? Mm-hmm. So the feedback was, don't make this as a use case only for drinking. Do it so it's going to be about something else. And we came up with eating. So this membership we sold for $300. Not only you can drink every night if you want, but you can also now switch to eating for a set lunch in many restaurants across the city. So we started at Kui, and eventually like we set it up at the refinery and many other places. Since then, like we saw like the use case of like drinks from 100%, it went all the way down to 20%, and food became like our primary use case at WisePass in 2018. Mm-hmm. So it took a year again, but then we realized that by taking those feedbacks and building this new value proposition, like we start to get users hooked, and then they kept like paying $300 every month. But
how do you recognize a productive feedback from something that is negative, you personally?
So I would say like a productive or unproductive feedback would be the following, like, can you do something about it when people will tell you something else? And if not, then that's an unproductive feedback. If it's not something I can take it and transform into something valuable for the market, for the customers, usually you just got to forget it. You have to just be used to receive the feedback and not taking it personally. So that's why the number one thing is empathy. Listen to people, whatever they say, that's fine. But the second step is, okay, so they said that. Why did they say that? Empathy. And then if they said that, is it going to make the product better or the service better? If yes, then I start working on it. Mm-hmm. So you got to get used to this kind of process where it's very uncomfortable just to get negative feedback. But the minute you're really comfortable to have this kind of like mindset, this famous growth mindset related to the previous question, mm-hmm. then you're going to have higher chances to improve.
Mm. And what are the main rules by which you live as a CEO, as a successful entrepreneur?
Sure. So I have like, the first was, am I aligned with my values? Mm. So I live by freedom, passion, excellence. And then this is really like the main values I try to focus on when things getting tough. So I'll give you one really short story. In 2019, I got this offer for $3 million just for another company to buy out from the US. And I realized that the offer was great, and I got a lot of people telling me that I should take it. actually got the paper like in front of me just to sign. And then they came to my office, but then eventually I said no. And the reason why is because it didn't first like align with the purpose. And then my goal was to live my 30s to build something really big. And I felt like just like taking the money like this would make me like purposeless. The second thing is actually, if I even take the offer, is it going to be like a great buyout, and am I going to be proud of it? Excellence. And I didn't believe so. So you actually try to get back to the values and try to see if it's aligned with your values or not. And this is actually how you understand that this is going to be a good decision or not. So is it good for the business? That would be the second thing. Like when you make a decision, you have to think not for yourself anymore. You have to think for the business overall. And sometimes people, even though they start the business with you, even though they're in the company for years, they'll forget that we're running a business. And then like they may cause like a very positive or contribute positively, but also negatively. So as a CEO, you're like the compass. You're like in the middle, and then you're at the core to remind people like what's good for the business, what's bad for the business, and why we're making this decision. So that's a second thing I have in mind, yeah.
And so we talk a little bit about WisePass. You are the founder of WisePass, CEO as well. What are the challenges that you faced with WisePass from its creation up to now?
Sorry for the interruption, and thank you so much guys for always supporting, for always commenting and sharing our content. If you want to support us more, please buy us coffee here so we can make more content for you.
Sure. The first thing I would say, that when I started WisePass, I did this research. And this research was about, okay, in the offline world, we see that retail is taking 94% of sales. Online is like 6% in the US. That was 2014. And I'm from marketing, e-commerce. And when I did the research, I was really surprised about this because in 2014, Amazon is like a huge company and they only have 6% of the sales online. My question was, what's going on for the 94% offline? That's the first question. And I realized that if you can build something where you can talk to the brands and then actually build an app or a technology that can actually drive sales offline, that would be an amazing solution for them. It would be a huge thing. But here's a challenge. When I did that, I was thinking only about my research and I forgot the consumers. So I built an app, and then after that, I just gave people like the app to use so they can go to offline locations in restaurants, in bars. We worked with L'Oreal in 2016. That was great. And then the people with the app would get to the restaurant, to the bar, the restaurant, or to the beauty store, body shop as well. But then like we saw that the consumer were like just using it like once or twice and would just leave the app. So what I realized is you shouldn't forget the consumer. You should start from the consumer first and then build a great value proposition so they can use it from themselves, not the other way around. The brand will come later, but if you can build a market with consumers using your product every day, almost every day, then this is when you're going to be successful. So the first primary mistake is focusing on the academic research and forgetting the most important component, your customers. Who is going to pay? Who's going to use it? And who's going to actually drive everything behind. The second thing would be like how to manage, make sure like the hiring. So like I'm in tech, so if you're in a tech company, you should have developers, right? And I shared this with many other founders and CEO when we raise money, millions of dollars or even less. The primary mistakes we make is we hire a lot of developers because like we're a tech company, we should have a lot of developers, but it costs a lot. So what happens is they take a big part of your monthly expenses. And then when you look at the results in tech and how they make progress, like it's actually going down. So, and the reason why is because when you have a big team, then the progress actually slow down over time. So it's just, and the primary mistake that we all made, or I made, is just by adding people doesn't actually translate into like a better yield. So the key learning is instead of hiring like 20 people, 15 people, try to hire small teams and incentivize them by actually whenever they complete the mission that they're being assigned, then this is when they're going to get the bonus, right? So scale down and focus on results, and then it's going to get much faster, surprisingly.
Less is more.
Yep, less is more, definitely. And that's why I have to thank one friend of mine, Tran from Recruitery. He helped me just to build the team last year, and then it's so much more effective. So the last thing for the key learning would be, the main challenge is actually for a startup, it's always about money, right?
Yeah, so how do we use money in a startup actually?
How you use money better, I would say. I'd say I have to say that you're always starving for cash, basically, when you run a startup. I sold my house when I started WisePass, so I got pretty much $70,000. But then you start just to spend all the money around, and then you don't look at how much money is going in, how much money is going out. You focus too much. That's my mistake. I was focused more how to build this value proposition, this product, how just to get more customers. And I didn't take into account how much money I was spending. And that was okay if you're actually getting customers, because of course this is important. But then if you're not looking at how much you're spending as well, and that was our biggest problem in 2019, then you're going to have a lot of invoices unpaid, right? So the key learning is, and it led to a big social media crisis for me. But eventually I get funding and it's great, we get money. So the key learning is about cost management. And then whatever we do now, we always really carefully spend the money. Really, actually, everything I spend over 1 million VND, which is not much, then we have to review it for at least a week. And then anything under, that's fine. And then we have those monthly reports on our bank account now. So I'm aware of everything on a daily basis. So we make sure we're on track for the month, for the quarter, for the year. And then we're much more reliable. Every 3 months when we talk to our investors, we're that's the only money we're going to spend. And you gotta most of the time say no to big fancy places, or I can't do all those things anymore.
So it's even though you have the money, you still have to behave like you don't have that much.
Correct.
Saving mode.
So what we do now is we lock the money in a savings account, and I can't even touch it. So by design, your finances are safe because you can't even spend the cash that is in your own account.
You trick yourself.
I trick myself. So that's why, and then I designed it, and then eventually I have to give it to my future CFO, the finance person. And they have to abide by this policy where we have to get always more money in the bank, and this extra money will be put in a savings account. So that's very safe, but that's also less exciting when you run the business, because you have limits, and you got to say no to people most of the time. So you learn how to say no to people, because you're not going to be able to spend more in this marketing campaign. You're not going to be able to run this big event. You're not going to be able to hire maybe 10 more people.
So how do you say no politely, efficiently?
Most of the time, when people are really pressing you, you have to tell them that you have to reconsider and think about it. If you exactly, and then, or the way I said is, I don't want to overpromise, and then I have just to consider. But if I say yes, I'll do it, and it's better to have a firm 100% yes, rather than yes, but it's not a real yes. So most of the time I will tell people, look, I'm happy to work with you. I'll be happy to work with you in the future and invest only when I'm sure 100% that you'll get paid every month as a partner. And then, I'm a reliable person. And that's much more, that makes you more trustworthy, rather than trying to say, come over, work with me. I'm not going to be able to pay you, but come over. And that's the wrong message to send. So you got to be really focus on building the relationship long term. That's actually the key word for me.
And when it comes to entrepreneurship in Vietnam compared to entrepreneurship in France, according to what are the pros and the cons?
For me, it's really personal, because I came back to Vietnam in 1999. I was in the cab with my dad, and then I saw the HSBC sign. Now I know it's on Dong Khoi, right? Mm-hmm. And I told myself I would come back to Vietnam one day for sure. I don't know how, when, why, but it was really emotional. I made this vow to myself, in 1999, I'll come back. And I came back 10 years later in 2009. So the process actually, it's emotional. The thing is, I just want to be here. And my parents are Vietnamese, and I just wanted to come back at least for 10 years, just to feel and see how it is in this country. I wasn't born in Vietnam, so I wanted to know at least like how it is here. And eventually I realized it's like my home country. The second would be like, it's more like materialistic. I would say its living standards are here much cheaper. So when you live in Paris, the living standards are off the charts. Like it's really expensive just to get a small studio. Here, like you can just have like a nice place. And let's say the third thing is like hustling here, networking with people is so much, I feel much more comfortable doing this here. And people are opening up, it's easier, and you don't have to go through many barriers, right? So those are the three things I would say, like Vietnam versus France for me.
Mm. I think it's also, there's this like smell of possibilities in the air in Vietnam. A lot of people talk about the American dream, but for me, it's more about the Vietnamese dream, because there is this culture of entrepreneurship in Vietnamese people, and it's very, it's also like a disease, but it's a great thing. Like we catch it very fast as foreigners. Like everything is possible. It's very action oriented. And according to you mentioned hustling. So you mentioned hustling. How do you hustle efficiently?
So that's my style, I would say, but the way I hustle is more like I'm gonna go to many like events or networking events where you're gonna meet a lot of people.
That's how we met, by the way.
Yeah, that's true. Exactly. We met like last year, and it was like I think Annie's lunch.
Yes.
And then what I do is just to meet people, but then take the time just to really know the person first, understand like what the person does today, but also maybe 6 months later things can change. But the most important part is I know you, I know what you do and what you're trying to do, and then like eventually what can we do together? Rather than on the first day I meet you, I say, Micka, what are you doing? Oh yes, let's do this and this and this, and like, or I have this thing, buy it from me. I'm more like a long-term guy where I'm gonna be chill for sometimes maybe too chill for some people, but I'm taking up to 6 to 12 months to really know people, because as a CEO, you can't just get around and really know a million people. So you got to be selective and take the time to invest with the person you want to spend time discussing one-on-one, build the relationships, and eventually see there might be something we can build together. So usually my style for hustling is I'm going to identify a few people I think we can spend time with, have a drink, have a coffee. Anyway, time we can allot together so we can have this interaction. And then eventually that may lead to some business or not. But sometimes like when you have a good interaction like that, they can think about like driving business for you, or I can think driving business for this person. So it's not about like just doing business together, but actually supporting each other. So the most and key component is to build the trust and the mutual understanding of what we do.
Agree. And what will be your piece of advice for somebody who would like to start their journey with entrepreneurship?
Yeah. So I would say like the first thing is don't just do it for the money, and make sure like for me personally, and because that's my personal driver, like if it's going to help you just to make you grow and become a better person on a daily basis because you're going to keep learning all the time, then you should do that. Because I realize like I'm happy mostly when I keep learning new things. And that's how actually I encompass this core component like inside my, on the way I live, like try to keep learning new things all the time. And then you're going to feel alive. It's going to be hard though. It's going to be challenging, and that's okay. But you don't grow if you don't actually struggle. So that would be my main piece of advice for anyone who would like to try to start a new business.
So embrace the struggles, guys.
Embrace the struggle.
I have one last piece of question for you, Lam. According to you, what can we do daily to become a better person?
I'd say like, that's one of your guests. It's like, he told me that, to be honest, and he's using Notion, Tracy. Mm-hmm. And it's called journaling. So there's like a different level of journaling, like daily, weekly, or monthly. I do it more weekly. I don't have time to do it daily. But it's just like you write down like all the things that went through your mind, feelings, even like analytical things or ideas, and then how you feel about it and all this. And you spend like less than an hour just to do this on a Sunday or a Saturday, that's fine. And then like you can actually look at some insights behind and see what can be done better. attitude, way of reacting, way of feeling, business ideas, which is great. So that helps. So journaling is actually something I started to do actually recently.
Nice. Thank you so much, Lam. It's been very precious to talk to you today. It has been very precious to talk to you today. Thank you for your advice and your wisdom.
Thanks for having me, Micka.
Yes, come here.